My name is Olivia Keene. I'm 34 years old. We found this in your old room. Want to explain why your name's all over it?" That's what my father says as he places a black USB drive onto the kitchen table like it's a weapon, not a piece of plastic. He's still wearing his crisp collared shirt from church sleeves rolled with military precision like always. The way he used to dress for family court for Air Force inspections. Like truth is something you can iron into a shirt. I look down at the drive. I don't touch it. I've never seen it before. Across the table, my mother stirs her coffee once twice and then places the spoon neatly beside her saucer. Her hands don't shake. Her gaze doesn't meet mine. It was behind the bookshelf, taped under a floorboard. I'm sure you remember it. I don't, because I didn't put it there. Because I didn't hide anything. Not in this house. Not ever. There's classified information on it, my father adds, voice cool. Names. Locations. Dates. He doesn't raise his voice. He never does. He just waits like a judge giving you a chance to plead guilty before the sentence. I look back and forth between them. Two people who raised me, fed me, paid for school, co-signed my first apartment in D.C. Two people who now look at me like a threat. "You called me down here for this," I say, voice quiet. "We thought it was best if you heard it from us first." That's what my mother says. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "This must be a mistake." She reaches for the landline. Yes, a landline, of course they still have one, and dials a number from memory. "She's here now," she says into the receiver. "Yes, I'll keep her in the house." She hangs up. Her eyes never leave her coffee. I push back my chair. "You called them. We didn't have a choice," my father says. "It's national security." The hallway spins slightly. I grip the edge of the table, not because I'm scared, but because I need something solid. Something that isn't lying to me. Outside, I hear the low hum of tires rolling across gravel. Then, the unmistakable slam of a van door. I step to the front window and part the curtain. Black, tinted, no insignia. 4 figures exit the vehicle in perfect sync. Black suits, sunglasses, calm postures that scream federal. One of them adjusts his earpiece. The other checks a thin tablet in his palm. The third one walks toward the front door. He knocks once, not twice. Not like a friend. Just once. "We've got her," someone says from outside. They don't yell it, they don't need to. Because this was never about fear. It was about precision. They think this is over. They think I'm theirs. But I know something they don't. There's a backup drive in the hallway closet behind the blankets. Triple encrypted, off-network. The real evidence of who's behind this. And it's not me. I just need 6 seconds alone. 6 seconds before they cross the threshold. I look at my parents. Neither speaks. Not even now. Not even when they know what they've done. And I realize this isn't a misunderstanding. This is a frame job by the people who brought me into this world. 3 hours earlier, I was in a secure building in Arlington sipping black coffee and reviewing thermal data from a defense contractor's testing zone. 3 months earlier, I flagged a backdoor pattern in a military cloud storage network that connected strangely to a series of procurement accounts linked to decommissioned weapons labs. And 1 year earlier, I warned someone quietly that old systems don't just die. They learn to hide. What I didn't expect was that someone would weaponize my own audit trail, that they'd use my clearance history to plant false credentials and reroute data through an account I hadn't touched in years. But it makes sense now. The house I grew up in, the parents who always knew better, they didn't just want me quiet. They wanted me useful, until I wasn't. Until I got too close to something real. I hear the lock turn. The front door swings open. The lead agent steps inside, dark glasses still on voice like static. "Ms. Olivia Keene." "Yes." "You'll need to come with us." I glance behind me toward the hallway. 6 seconds. That's all I need. I nod. "May I change first?" He tilts his head, listening to something through his earpiece, then nods. 2 minutes. You'll be supervised. I walk slowly toward the hallway, keeping my breathing even. Behind me, one of the agents follows. But he's not from my world. He doesn't know I can bypass a 3-digit biometric lock with 2 fingers and a loose seam. Doesn't know I trained for silent entries and discreet exfil. He thinks I'm just a contractor, just a civilian, just another name in a file. He has no idea I'm the reason 3 domestic cyber breaches never made the news last year, and he definitely doesn't know that the real evidence of my innocence is sitting 6 feet away under a stack of linen. I step into the closet. My hand moves fast, reaching behind the shelves, pressing a near-invisible switch. The panel opens. Inside, wrapped in cloth, is the drive I stored 6 months ago. I slip it into the inside pocket of my jacket before turning around. "Ready," I say. The agent watches me closely, but not closely enough. He doesn't notice the shift in my eyes or the fire building in my spine. Because for the first time in my life, I know exactly what my parents are afraid of. They taught me to follow rules, but I taught myself how to rewrite them. I wasn't raised by liars, not at first. I was raised by rules, by regimens, by a mother who alphabetized our spice rack and a father who timed his morning routine to the second. He used to wake me up with a whistle 2 sharp notes like I was a recruit, not a daughter. "Precision is love," he told me once. "You don't iron the uniform because it's wrinkled. You iron it because it matters." My mother was softer but no less rigid. She hugged me like someone following a manual, held my hand across the street like she was signaling traffic. They weren't cruel. They were structured, image first, respect the rules kind of people. Our lawn was never untrimmed. Our smiles were always white. I never saw them argue in public. And they never ever tolerated misbehavior, which included everything from being late to asking why it wasn't a childhood. It was training, and I passed every drill. By high school, I'd already mastered the language of silence. Straight A's, varsity tennis, valedictorian, no alcohol, no parties, no opinions I didn't carefully vet first. My parents called me mature for my age. What they meant was obedient. Then came college, and that's where the cracks formed, because structure without freedom becomes suffocation, and I couldn't breathe anymore. I enrolled at UT Austin majoring in computer engineering with a focus on network security. My father pushed for aeronautics. My mother wanted psychology. I said no, my first real one. Their faces didn't show anger. They showed disappointment, which in our house was worse. But I stuck with it. I joined a campus group focused on ethical hacking white hats who tested campus networks for vulnerabilities and reported them quietly to IT. I was good, too good. By junior year, I had built a private tool that could detect latent surveillance signals hidden in mobile devices left behind by cheap spyware that universities failed to purge. My team didn't believe it until I proved it, publicly. It made waves, it made enemies, but it got me noticed. 1 year later, I was recruited by a subcontractor working with the Department of Defense helping vet autonomous threat modeling systems built for military drone operation. By 26, I had clearance. By 28, I had respect from strangers. From my parents, still silence. When I came home for holidays, they asked surface questions. Are you dating anyone? Are you eating enough? Do you still go to church but never? What are you building? What are you proud of? What keeps you up at night? And I learned to stop offering answers they didn't want. I think they preferred me as a checklist. A daughter who looked right, smiled right, never embarrassed them. They couldn't understand the gravity of my work, and they didn't want to. It threatened the narrative they built about who we were, a perfect military family, clean and proud, untouched by mess. But defense work is mess. You swim through corruption to find stability. You sift through terabytes of betrayal to prevent a missile misfire. It's code, yes, but it's also conscience. They never understood that, and I stopped trying to make them. I kept a professional distance for years, holidays only, a few texts, a dinner here, a stiff birthday there. Until 6 months ago. That's when the real problem started. I was reviewing a procurement audit involving old shell companies once used to outsource logistics for drone fleets. My job was to scan for anomalies contracts that no longer lined up fund transfers that skipped vetting. Most of them were bureaucratic noise. But one chain stood out, a procurement route signed by a now-defunct contractor, traced back to someone who worked in the Defense Logistics Office. It wasn't active, but it matched a vendor name I'd heard as a kid, from my mother's office. I didn't think much of it at the time, just a coincidence. But the deeper I went, the worse it got. Old logins, phantom activity, purchase requests with falsified timestamps, all converging toward a single access ID, one that had been dormant for nearly a decade, one that once belonged to her. I flagged it internally but didn't attach her name. I followed protocol. I thought that would protect me. It didn't. 3 weeks later, I received a warning, not from the agency, from a contact I hadn't spoken to in years, Briggs, my old DARPA mentor. "Someone's sweeping your audit trail," he wrote. "Looks like they're covering something. Be careful who you trust, even your own logs." I tightened my encryption. I shut down personal servers. And I waited, because part of me hoped naively that this wasn't what it looked like, that my parents were many things strict, proud, cold, but not dirty, not willing to sell me out to cover a breach. But now I know better, because that USB in the kitchen. The one with my name, I recognize the code pattern. It's mine, but fragmented, modified, twisted. A signature lifted from my early sandbox builds ones only 2 people ever had access to me, and whoever took the backup before I left for Arlington. Someone with physical access to my things. Someone who knew how to make it look real. And now I'm in the back of a black van being driven toward a holding site. No cuffs, no formal charges, but no freedom either. Just 2 agents flanking me in silence. One of them has the same tablet from earlier. He doesn't speak. The other stares straight ahead. We pass the city limits. Fields blur past us. The sky darkens. And I sit there thinking, if my parents were willing to destroy me, what else are they willing to do to keep their secrets buried? The facility isn't on any map. It's one of those quiet installations that lives in a jurisdictional gray zone, part DHS, part NSA, part ghost, buried in the flat sprawl outside San Antonio, somewhere behind a field of nothing and a line of rusted fencing that hums faintly with electricity. When the van stops, the agent in front finally speaks. "You'll be briefed upon intake. Don't speak unless asked. Don't lie unless you're very, very good at it." He says it like a joke. His voice doesn't change. They lead me inside. No handcuffs, no Miranda rights, but no illusion of freedom either. Inside, the hallway is sterile, painted in government beige. Cameras in every corner. Every movement buzzes against my skin like static. I know how these places work, not because I've been here, but because I helped build the systems that support them. Irony, I suppose. I used to write intrusion detection protocols for installations just like this. Now I am the intrusion. They put me in a holding room. White walls, no windows. A metal table bolted to the floor. No clock, no glass, not even the illusion of time. There's one chair. I sit. 3 minutes pass. Or 30. Then a man walks in, late 50s gray, buzz-cut tailored shirt with a wrinkle-proof tie. He doesn't introduce himself. He places a folder on the table and slides it toward me. Inside, 3 screenshots of code, an authorization log, and a profile photo of me from my DC clearance badge taken 2 years ago. I'm smiling in the photo. I don't smile now. "You've been busy," he says calmly. "I haven't seen that code in years," I reply. "But it's your structure, your comment style, your syntax, and none of the surrounding access logs match my devices." He doesn't answer. He taps the photo. "You understand what this looks like, Ms. Keene?" "Yes. I also understand digital forgery. We don't make arrests on forgeries. You didn't arrest me." That stops him. He doesn't smile, but the corner of his mouth twitches. "You're sharp. You know I didn't write that code." He leans back in the chair, folds his arms. "Prove it." That's the thing about being framed in the digital world. It's almost perfect. Metadata can be scrubbed, code can be cloned, timestamps can be spoofed, but there's always something they miss. A fingerprint in logic flow, a decision tree that doesn't align, a memory leak that no real analyst would ignore. In the file, they show me the exploit uses an outdated buffer overflow strategy I haven't touched in 6 years. I stopped writing like that after a 2017 protocol shift. Anyone who actually knew my methods would know I adapted. Someone who just copied my style would have replicated my old habits. I tell him that. He says nothing, just closes the folder and leaves. They keep me in the room another day. No official charge, no call, no contact. Meals come in through a slot in the wall, sealed calorie-counted monitored. I don't eat much, not because I'm afraid of poison, because I'm trying to think and food slows me down. I start testing the camera. It's fixed in the upper corner, but it adjusts every time I move more than 6 inches. I note the rhythm, the click, and then I begin speaking aloud, narrating what I see. Here's the part where you realize I'm not bluffing. Here's where you double-check my early sandbox logs and realize the entry key used wasn't mine. Here's where you check procurement shell logs from the Dallas node and realize someone reused a retired Access ID. Someone lazy. I'm not talking to the camera. I'm talking to whoever's watching from behind it, because if there's one thing I know about surveillance teams, it's that curiosity eventually wins. And the moment someone on the other side decides I'm more interesting as an asset than as a suspect, that's when things shift. On day 3, someone leaves me a pen. I don't touch it for the first hour. Then I disassemble it slowly. Inside the barrel is a microchip, embedded under the ink tube, almost surgically fitted. No blinking light, no pulse. But I know what it is. It's a test. If I dismantle it and say nothing, they think I'm hiding. If I ignore it, they think I'm blind. So I do something better. I write a message on the wall in neat block letters. Wrong decade, wrong logic tree, wrong target. Then I place the chip on the table perfectly aligned. They don't respond. But 4 hours later, the door opens again. This time, it's someone different. Younger, female, sharp eyes, plain suit. She introduces herself as Agent Dyer, no first name given. I reviewed your audit trail, she says. It's clean. Too clean. Because it's real. Because it's been wiped. Then ask yourself who would benefit from that. She doesn't argue, just sits and watches me. We know the Access ID traces back to an old logistics shell. And you know my mother used to work procurement. We also know she hasn't held a clearance in years. Doesn't mean she doesn't know how to move data. Silence. Then, we also ran your emergency signal. I blink. Excuse me. Your sandbox ping. Someone activated it from an external device. Clean chain. Fort Meade signature. My throat tightens. Briggs. He got the signal. We'll confirm the response in 48 hours, she adds. Until then, you stay here. Under what authority? National interest. You know I didn't do this. She doesn't confirm. She just says, the real story doesn't scare them. You do. And then she walks out, leaving me alone, with nothing but 4 white walls and the knowledge that I was right, and no one in that building was ready for it. Continue to part 4 low point. There's no clock in the room, but I know time is moving because the lights flicker once every few hours. Not enough to be annoying, just enough to break your sense of continuity, like a psychological pressure valve. It's day 4, I think. I haven't spoken to anyone since Agent Dyer left. No updates, no messages, no shift in tone. Even the meals have become more mechanical cold, timed to arrive just after I start pacing like they're trying to map my mood. I would have broken by now if I were anyone else. That's the point. They're not interrogating me. They're not charging me. They're just waiting, trying to see what happens when someone is buried without a verdict. I lie on the cot with one arm behind my head and stare at the ceiling. There's a small bump in the corner tile barely noticeable, probably a mounting anchor for something, but I fixate on it, assign it meaning. Imagine it's a crack in the design, a weakness in their plan. Because if I don't believe there's a flaw somewhere, I'll start believing the worst, and I can't afford that, not yet. 3 more hours, or maybe 5 pass before anything happens. The slot opens again. This time no tray, just an envelope, no label, no seal. Inside a printout of my bank statements, highlighted in yellow. $40,000 deposited in staggered amounts over 3 weeks, from shell accounts. The kind used in black market trades. I recognize none of them. I didn't move that money, but the logs say otherwise. The timestamps align perfectly with the weeks I was on assignment in Qatar times when I wasn't even in the country. Whoever did this didn't just fake my code, they cloned my digital footprint. We've got her, the agent had said outside the house. Now I see it clearly. They never expected to prove I was guilty. They just needed enough doubt that I couldn't prove I wasn't. I breathe slowly, controlling the burn in my throat. I've trained for this, not the prison, the psychological erosion. You work in cybercrime long enough, you learn it's not the breach that breaks you, it's the narrative collapse. The part where everything you thought was solid, your logs, your access, history, your own devices becomes suspect, even to you. I start second-guessing everything. Did I ever misplace a token? Could someone have seen me log in? Did I encrypt that audit folder tightly enough? Did I ever tell my mother too much? That's the part that hurts. Not the betrayal, the possibility that I enabled it. I remember sitting in our kitchen 2 years ago casually explaining the difference between zero-day exploits and ransomware to my mom after she asked how work was. She sipped her tea, nodded politely, and said, "Just don't get too deep into dangerous things." I thought it was small talk. Now I wonder if it was reconnaissance. I think about Briggs again. The Fort Meade ping, the sandbox activation. He must have seen it. He must have passed it on. But if so, why haven't they come? Why hasn't someone opened that door with a flash drive of raw proof and cleared my name? Because maybe they're waiting too. Maybe they want to see how long I can hold out, how long I can survive being erased. On what I think is night 5, I finally cry. Not loudly, not with shaking, just one tear, sliding sideways across the bridge of my nose. I don't wipe it. I let it fall onto the cot because it's real, and because I don't want to forget that I'm still here, still angry, still intact. The next morning, if it's morning, the light above the door clicks on. Agent Dyer enters. Alone. No folder this time, just a tablet. She sets it down in front of me and says, "Someone's asking questions." I sit up. Briggs. She doesn't answer. "What do you want me to say?" I ask. She sighs. "You're too calm. That's not a flaw. It is to them. Then tell them they should have built a better lie." She tilts her head. "Do you have any idea what you've been sitting on? Enlighten me." She turns the tablet toward me. It's a list of names, not just mine, not just procurement aliases, but people. People like me. Former contractors, clearance holders, quiet engineers who flagged red alerts and vanished from projects. 3 names I recognize. 1 I trained. Each one had suspicious withdrawals, unauthorized access alerts, infractions that led to quiet terminations, or in one case, a disappearance. They tried this before I whisper. Yes, and I'm the one they finally couldn't break. Agent Dyer leans forward. "You were never the target, Olivia. You were the test." I go cold. "What do you mean your parents were used too? Just not the way you think." "So they're innocent?" "I didn't say that." She taps the screen once. Briggs's name appears. "He called in a favor. Your sandbox code wasn't just pinged, it was traced upstream. There's a keylogger pattern unique to your original encryption string, the only one you kept offline. The one I hid in my closet." She nods. "It verified you're not the source. So I'm clear." She stands. "Not yet. But you're not invisible anymore." She starts for the door. "What happens now?" I ask. "Now," she says, "without turning back, we find out how deep this really goes. The key to unraveling a false narrative isn't emotion. It's repetition. Patterns always betray the architect." After Agent Dyer left the room, stayed locked, but something shifted. The silence wasn't hollow anymore, it was loaded. Someone had seen the truth, and now the walls weren't watching to break me. They were watching to learn from me. So I did what I was trained to do. I started thinking like the threat. I requested access to a terminal not connected to the outside, of course, but I framed it as a cooperative gesture. Said I wanted to write a statement for review, consolidate my perspective on the data breach. The guards hesitated. Dyer didn't. The machine they gave me was air-gapped. No network, no ports. Just a notepad program and a stripped-down OS. Exactly what I wanted. Because I wasn't trying to send a message out. I was trying to set a trap. Inside that terminal, I recreated the cloned audit trail they accused me with, line by line. Not to defend myself, but to rebuild the logic the imposter used. And what I found was staggering. The falsified code used a predictive loop embedded with randomized salt, something only a handful of defense contractors had used. One of them had published a paper on this method 3 years ago. I had read it, dismissed it, too bloated for real-world efficiency. But now, here it was used against me, which meant whoever built the frame studied my habits and used a method I had openly criticized, banking on the idea that no one would believe I used something I once rejected. It was almost brilliant. Almost. Because there was one thing they didn't account for: a digital watermark. 3 years ago, during a DARPA assignment, I developed a habit of embedding invisible verification lines into my sandbox tools, subtle pattern triggers that lived outside normal logic chains. They weren't visible in most logs, but when pinged with the right signature, they activated a brief cascade of instructions designed to self-authenticate. That signature a 4-line cipher only I knew, stored on a cold backup drive. The one I grabbed from my closet just before I was taken. The same drive currently sealed inside my jacket, tucked in the locker they confiscated. And if I could get access to it, even for 5 minutes, I could detonate the whole lie. I waited for Dyer to return. Didn't ask, didn't push, just watched the camera like it was a clock. When she finally stepped in again, I stood before she said anything. "I want to help," I said, "but I need my backup drive." "Not possible," she said reflexively. "I'm not asking to plug it in. Just let me decrypt the signature sequence. You can supervise. No network, no risk." She paused. Her eyes searched mine, not for the truth, but for leverage. "Why should I believe you? Because your forensic team already suspects the trail was planted. You wouldn't be back here otherwise. I can prove where it started and where it didn't." She folded her arms. "If this backfires, I lose my clearance. If you don't try, people like me keep vanishing. One trace at a time, another pause. Then 10 minutes, one room, 2 guards." I nodded. "Deal." The room they moved me to was no bigger than a supply closet, but it had what I needed: a clean laptop, no ports exposed, and a single workstation desk. They handed me the drive in a sealed bag. I unwrapped it slowly, like opening a loaded question. I plugged it into the offline machine. The system blinked. 3 directories appeared. I opened none of them. Instead, I ran a sandbox environment and typed in the cipher. R4Z Kuxnyan echo.false.signature.5.x run. The screen froze, then flickered, then populated with an authentication hash trail that reached back 5 years far beyond the fabricated logs. "This is it," I said quietly. "What are we looking at?" asked Dyer, standing just over my shoulder. "A ghost fingerprint. This confirms the falsified code doesn't match the way my tools self-validate. The system was cloned, not authored. Can they replicate this validation? No. Because they don't know it exists. And this proves your parents." "No," I cut in. "This proves someone used them. Their old credentials, their history. But it was someone else holding the keys." Dyer leaned closer. "Who?" "That's what we find out next." They pulled me from isolation an hour later, not because I was innocent yet, but because I was useful. I was escorted to a larger chamber, walls of screens, quiet analysts at stations' keyboards clicking like rain on a roof. A joint cyber forensic lab cell. Dyer turned to me. "You're leading this now." I blinked. "Say that again." "Briggs backed your authentication method. Langley confirmed it. You're clean. But we still need the other names, the ones from the list." She nodded. "One of them surfaced this week, another data tech flagged for unauthorized log access. Same framing method, same salt randomizer. So this isn't over." "No," she said. "It's beginning." As I settled into the workstation, I realized I hadn't thought about my parents since the data validated. Not once, not in fear, not in rage. Because in this room, they weren't my problem anymore. They were part of a system I now had eyes on. And if they had been complicit, if they knew more than they let on, then their silence wouldn't protect them anymore. Not from me. Not from the truth. Sunday brunch. That's when they gather. My parents don't do parties. They do reputation. Their weekly brunches are polished, quiet performances for their social circle retired officers, ex-contractors, sharp-tongued neighbors with embroidered napkins, and security clearance secrets they whisper like gossip. It's been exactly 12 days since I walked out of the black site facility. Not with an apology, with a mission. Because once we uncovered the root signature in the cloned access logs, the forensics led directly to a retired procurement consultant, one who used to run off-the-books vendor pipelines under a false name. A man who had access to my mother's dormant systems, who moved through social events in Texas like a ghost. His name was Harold L. Brandt, and his primary address next door to my parents'. I don't knock when I walk into the house. I use the same key I had in high school. The door clicks behind me. Laughter spills from the kitchen. Smells of rosemary chicken warm bread coffee. Voices, old friends, family, everyone sitting around the large dining table beneath the chandelier I used to stare at during punishment dinners. My father sees me first. He freezes mid-laugh, his glass half raised. The room quiets. Eyes fall on me like a gavel. Olivia, my mother says, recovering with a trained smile. What a surprise. I didn't come to eat, I reply. A ripple of discomfort hums through the table. One of the guests shifts in her seat. A cousin pretends to check her phone. Well, my father says, rising slowly, we're in the middle of something. Maybe come back. No, I cut in. You're in the middle of a lie. My voice isn't loud, it's deliberate, even, and everyone hears it. My mother's fingers tighten around her napkin. This isn't the time you made the time when you turned me in. Now the table is silent. Only the kitchen fan buzzes behind me. I step forward and pull a folder from my coat, slide it onto the table between the mimosa glasses and linen. This is a printout of the transaction logs that funded the shell accounts. The IP addresses used to authorize access. One of them traces to Brandt's private network. Harold, my father, says, eyes narrowing. He's a friend. He's a fraud. He's been using both of you to route unauthorized intel through recycled credentials, including Mom's. He used my audit trail to bury the breach. And you gave him access to my backup drives when you helped me pack out of D.C., didn't you? My mother stands now. Her face is blank. Not afraid, not indignant. Just unreadable. We didn't know, she says. You didn't ask. Harold said it was all above board. That you were unstable. He showed us emails he wrote, using accounts he cloned. You weren't answering us. We didn't know what you were working on. He said you'd gone rogue. So you turned me in. Silence, long and low. My father clears his throat. We had to be sure. You chose your brunch guest over your daughter. We chose to protect what mattered. That hits me like a blade. I feel it in my chest. Then what I'm about to do won't surprise you. Outside, an engine hums. A matte black SUV pulls to a stop at the curb. Unmarked. Subtle. The front door opens again before anyone inside moves. 4 men in dark suits enter without knocking. 2 of them stand behind me. The other 2 flank the table. The agent in front lifts a slim device and scans the room. Then he locks eyes with my mother. Margaret Keene, we need you to come with us. She gasps. I didn't. You're not under arrest, but you are named in an ongoing federal investigation concerning data compromise and unauthorized access to federal encryption keys. She turns to me. You brought them here. I brought the truth here. My father steps forward. You have no idea what you're doing. No, I interrupt. You had no idea who I was. That's the difference. He stares at me, jaw tight, throat trembling. We raised you better than this? No. You raised me to obey. I taught myself how to fight. One of the agents steps between us. Ma'am, if you'll come with us. My mother gathers her coat slowly. She doesn't cry. She doesn't scream. She just walks. At the door, she pauses, turns back. We didn't mean to destroy you. You didn't, I say. Then what did we do? You made me unstoppable. Back in the SUV, Agent Dyer sits quietly in the front. She doesn't speak until we've left the block. That was intense. They gave me their worst. Did it help? No, but now they don't own the story. She nods. Brandt's already in holding. He cracked within 3 hours, gave up 2 more names. So it wasn't just me. No, you were one of 12. Why me? Because you could be broken or built into something. I lean my head against the window, watching the neighborhood fade. The trees blur, the fences vanish. So what am I? Now Dyer doesn't hesitate. You're the firewall. There's a hallway at Fort Meade. They don't put in orientation packets. It's beneath the main cyber operations wing behind 2 security checkpoints and lit with cool blue LEDs that make the steel walls feel like a submarine. The glass doors at the end don't have a nameplate, just a biometric scanner and a quiet hum like the place is breathing. This is where they put the ones who don't flinch anymore. I walk that hallway twice a week now, not as a suspect. As lead analyst of the Red Trace Protocol, an internal task force built to identify, prevent, and reverse engineer insider threats embedded through social engineering. We're hunting people like Brandt, and the people behind them, and I'm the one they listen to. No rank, no salute, just results. The first few weeks after the confrontation were a blur of closed-door debriefings, sealed files, and language that felt more like chess than conversation. But through it all, one thing stayed consistent. They stopped calling me the contractor. They started calling me by name. Dyer offered me clearance at a level that made my chest tighten the first time I saw the documents. It wasn't just about validation. It was access to the map to the game board I'd always known was bigger than my parents let on. Turns out they weren't the top. They were pawns, manipulated by someone smart enough to use trust as currency and family as camouflage. And I had nearly paid for that lesson with my life. Now I teach it to others. We've since identified 8 other compromised agents. Not all were framed like me. Some were coerced. Others were simply ignored after they waved red flags no one cared to read. But we built a pattern, a trail, a system. And when you understand the system, you can break it or rebuild it. I chose the latter. My mother hasn't spoken to me since the day she was escorted out. I heard through legal that she's cooperating, providing timelines, logs, and even names, though how much is self-preservation versus guilt, I'll never know. My father sent a letter, typed, formal, the kind of thing you'd expect from someone who never learned to say sorry without signing a form. We raised you with structure because we were scared of the chaos you now face head on. We didn't know how to raise someone stronger than us. I didn't write back, not out of spite, but because I don't need them to understand anymore. I understand myself, and that's enough. Briggs and I had coffee the week after I started at Meade. He didn't say much, just pushed a folded note across the table. Inside, it said, "You saw it before anyone else. You don't need applause. You need space to do it again." I still carry it in my badge holder, right behind my access card. It reminds me of who I am without telling me what to be. Some nights I still dream of the white room, the silence, the sterile lights. But when I wake up, there's a window next to me now. And outside it, the world keeps going. Not because it fixed itself, but because people like me made sure it didn't break. I don't want credit. I want function. I want safety that doesn't wear a flag, but lives in code, in protocols, in the quiet integrity of someone who doesn't flinch when it's easier to fold. I'm that someone now, and no one's taking that from me again. Last week, we intercepted a new exploit attempt through a shadow vendor chain, same signature style, same exploit base, but with a new twist and attempt to frame an analyst in training. They used nearly identical methods to what was used on me, almost, but they forgot one thing, me. I spotted the flaw in 6 minutes. I flagged the data built, the patch alerted internal, and personally briefed the deputy director. When I finished, he leaned back, nodded slowly, and said, "We've got her." I looked at him carefully. That's what they said when they came for me. Difference is, he replied this time it's true. He meant it as a compliment, and I took it. Not because I needed to be got, but because I'd made myself unshakable. Not loud, not angry, just unmissable. They thought taking my name would erase me. They thought a USB and a signature line could silence what I'd built. But what they didn't realize was, I don't live in their system anymore. I redesigned it, and I did it without a headline, without a spotlight, without a press conference. Just a quiet van, 4 agents, 1 false accusation, and a woman they never saw coming until she refused to disappear.